I've been accused of being a racist. I've been accused of all this, but the truth of the matter is all throughout history, these Caucasians have been shown to be infrastructure builders. And when you study Hinduism, you find out that its Aryan roots, it was a Caucasian deal. When you study the legend of Titicaca in South America, all of Melanesia, Polynesia, Micronesia, Thor Heyerdahl has documented this very well. When you only use the information from non-Caucasian peoples, they all say the same thing, just like the Chinese did about the Dragon Kings who founded their civilization. And when they're asked why are they called Dragon Kings, did they have wings? And they say no, they had beard. To the Chinese, someone who could grow a beard in ancient time made them a dragon king, and the dragons were simply rulers who were much more intelligent than the local. They were of a different race. They were porcelain skinned. They were gemstone eyed. These are things that are not at all associated to the Chinese people. Just like the Sumerians. The Sumerians regarded themselves as the black-headed people, and they took great pride in that. And when they showed themselves on their own artwork, they were hairless. They could not grow facial hair. They had black eyes, long, straight black hair like the American Indian. But when they showed the Anuna, they showed Caucasians with porcelain skin, giant eyes. They were always used lapis lazuli for the eyes because it was the only available mineral that was the color blue in all of Sumeria. Yeah, guys, you got to understand the Sumerian texts are packed full with metallurgy, mineralogy, and a lot of very technical mountainous terms. But there are no mountains in Sumer. There are no metals in Sumer. There are no mines in Sumer. So we're dealing with a culture that came from somewhere else that had all these technologies, and they're called the Anuna. This is what the Sumerians called them. And the Anuna on the statuary on the bus are 100% white people. It looks like Caucasians are building infrastructures throughout all around the world throughout history, and then when they leave, the indigenous population fall back into their default mode. The default mode is culture bearers. There are no other people in this world that are better culture bearers than the Chinese. The Chinese will maintain a tradition and a culture for 5,000 years unchanged. If there is no outside intervention from someone else, from another culture, if there isn't genius that is attributed from somewhere else that's introduced into the culture, the Chinese will remain static. This is what they have done. So they're not the only ones. We have the same situation in Africa. So we have found these genetic fail safes where creativity is actually it's hampered, and there is this arrested development that is encoded within the human genome, and it seems to affect all peoples except Caucasians. Caucasians build infrastructures, they build institutions. Almost every religion in the entire world, even though it's not really a Caucasian religion anymore, the tenets, those who hold the tenets of those religions admit that it was foreigners who introduced those elements. So even Buddhism, 100% Caucasian. All the Iranian, the whole Zoroastrian, Ahriman, every bit of that. Iranians are Aryan. That's where Iran comes from. So all these things from the discoveries of Thor Heyerdahl and so many other people they have only taken the data that was given to them from the non-Caucasian people, and they put the same thing. Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan and all these ancient gods who were civilization builders had brought a people over who were not indigenous. They were not like them. They were considered godlike. They were a mariner race, and they built these fantastic pyramids in these cities, and they incorporated all these institutions, and then they left. And every time they leave, what happens? The local population goes back into default mode. This is what happened in 1421 right here with the Chinese people. They went right back into default mode, which they just can't help themselves. It's not anything that we can blame the Chinese for. Whoever developed our avatars and our cerebral capacities, which is all coding and it's all DNA, whoever did this development put this arrested development in these people. You can't blame Caucasians for it at all. But somebody designed these avatars, and somebody designed these avatars with cerebral restrictions that hamper creativity. And that creativity seems to, when it comes to the building of infrastructure, seems to be unhampered when it comes to the Caucasian. So this is something that a whole field of study should be opened on, but it's not going to happen. Because as long as you have the tiny hats in control of all publishing in the world now, you're never going to have anybody who's going to be funded, who's going to be able to even get published or peer reviewed that even talks about these things. The agenda today is to make Whitey look real bad, and this is what the publishing industry does, and they've been doing it since World War II. It was one of the agreements of the Nuremberg trials. So they wanted to make sure that something like Nazism would never again rise in the world. So in order to counter Nazism, they had to do two things, and this is what they've been doing since 1946. And the Nuremberg trials started the whole publishing regime of where they're basically going to demonize white people and raise everybody else up in the world as being the originators of their culture and the originators of whatever's found. They're going to highly compartmentalize history so that if you're in Mexico and you're Mexican, then your ancestors built the Toltec pyramids. This is the agenda, but the actual facts are if you are Mexican today, then you are part of Castilian or Aragonian blood and indigenous Mayan and Zapotec blood. Aztec blood. However, you don't have anything to do at all with the Toltec Empire because even the Aztecs told us that the Toltec were bearded and they were white and they had nothing to do with the Aztecs. They weren't even genetically related. The Aztecs came into the Toltec cities after the Toltecs were gone. They got in their ships and they left, but they left whole pyramid cities all throughout Mexico. The Aztecs did not build those cities, they inherited them. Just like the Inca did not build Cusco. They didn't build Tiahuanaco. They didn't build Pumapunka. They didn't build the hundreds of other sites that are all throughout the Andes, Altiplano. They didn't build any of those. The Inca inherited them. But if you don't talk to the Inca and ask them where all these things came from, you wouldn't know that because you would be subject to an education that was completely written by the tiny hats. And your descendants will fill up all the islands of the earth. They will survey the entire world. That their children's children will fill all the countries in the entire world. And there is no other people. Remember, Brahma is an Aryan prophetic god. Brahman, he was married to his half sister, who was Saraswati. This ancient story. There's no other race in the world that does what Caucasians do. This isn't white supremacy or anything. Every single race in this world stays in their own geographical confines. They do not migrate, they do not colonize, nor are they assimilationists. But all three of these traits are solely Caucasian traits. Caucasians have always been mariner races. They have always migrated. They have always moved from continent to continent. Caucasians have always been very, very nomadic. Every other race in this world stays within its own geographical territories. They do not leave. American Indian tribes, they stay in North America and they follow the buffalo. The Chinese have always stayed in China. And all the other cultures have stayed. The Africans have always stayed in Africa unless other people were using them for human chattel. So we have South American cultures have always stayed in South America. We don't have that with the people who descended from the basically Hurrians, the Hurrian stock people. We call them Aryans today, but the original were the Hurrian people. And the Hurrian people completely colonized all of northern India among the Dravidians of India, the indigenous people who, after 5,000 years of contact with the Aryans, the Dravidians are still where? They're still in India. They haven't gone anywhere. Because if it's not a Caucasian people, they will always stay where they're from. It's only in the last 300 years when Caucasians have basically colonized the entire world and imposed Western imperialism on all these other countries through programs like the East India Company. It's only by virtue of that have a lot of other cultures and have now non-Caucasian peoples have been going all over the place because we've built now an international infrastructure which allows for people from Pakistan to fly to the United States. It allows for people in India to fly to Germany. It allows all these things. But prior to the the incorporation of Caucasian technologies and infrastructures imposed on the entire world. I mean, remember, guys, I'm saying imposed because that's exactly what we did. For those of you who don't know, Japan refused to open up their ports to the world. Japan wasn't going to have anything. They were totally isolationist. But the United States sent a naval fleet to Japan, and we threatened to cannonade their paper cities if they didn't open up their ports to trade. And since then, the Japanese have shown their genius in the ability to make micro everything that we have engineered. Every discovery and everything that we have ever come up with, the Japanese did it better. So everybody has their value, but it's always taking Caucasians to impose their infrastructures and technologies on others to find out what that value is.